Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyersportsbetting.com. We're in the sports section on Roku. Look us up, Dwyer Boxing and Sports News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, the Wladimir Klitschko, Alexander Povetkin hugfest just ended, and I have two questions. The first is, who was that third man in the ring? The second is, where was the referee? This fight easily was one of the worst refereed fights I have ever seen in my life, right? You simply cannot show up at a fight and hug a guy for 12 rounds, clinch for at least 40-50 seconds of every round, toss your opponent around the ring, and not even get a warning from the referee for several rounds, right? By the time the referee takes a point away from Wladimir Klitschko, this fight's completely over. We've seen fights where guys who clinch are constantly warned by the referee, and then the ref acts. Here, the referee should have taken action very early in this fight, right? Because quite frankly, it's not a competitive fight if one fighter is simply allowed to hug you. Now, let me say this. I'm biased. This fight blew up on me. I thought the heavyweight championship, at least Wladimir Klitschko's portion of it, was going to change hands. I was rolling with Alexander Povetkin in this one. As I said in the pre-fight video, he had to do two things. He had to dodge the jab, and then he had to dodge the clinch. Right now, Povetkin certainly is not without blame. He dodges the jab early, but then he continually gets clinched. And let me just say, if all you can do inside is hug your opponent, then you don't know how to fight inside, right? Wladimir Klitschko was hugging Alexander Povetkin to the point where we had more of a wrestling match than a boxing match. This fight really came down to Klitschko using length, shooting a jab. Anytime Povetkin got inside, Wladimir Klitschko would hug him, right? No excessive holding called. Let me also make another complaint. Now, I understand I'm whining here, but let's talk about that seventh round. That's the round of the fight. Now, let me say this. This is boxing. It's not wrestling, right? I can't hit you, hurt you, then decide I'm just going to go over to you and throw you to the canvas and expect to have that count as a knockdown, no matter how hurt you are. Knockdowns need to be finished. I have to finish the combination. Just like I can't hit you, stop fighting, turn my back while you're still standing, and then pretend that I have a knockdown, nor can I hit you, hurt you, then stop punching altogether. Just walk over to you and throw you to the canvas. Yet that's what Wladimir Klitschko does in the seventh round. And then incredibly, this casual fan, who somehow was wearing a referee uniform and was actually in the ring, counted it as a knockdown. That was outrageous. As I saw it, Wladimir Klitschko did get one legitimate knockdown in a round in which there were allegedly 3 knockdowns, right? Absurd. You simply cannot throw a man to the canvas like that. Let me point out, too, shouldn't that have gotten at least a warning from the referee? You know, above and beyond the excessive holding, which the fighter should have been told to stop from early on. Shouldn't Wladimir Klitschko's throwing of Povetkin to the canvas at least have warranted a warning? Let's talk about some of the mistakes, too, Povetkin made. He has the faster foot speed than Wladimir Klitschko. When he gets inside, you can't just get inside, not have a hand up, and allow the other guy to just put your head in a beer lock, right? That's what Wladimir Klitschko was doing. He was literally having Povetkin's head in headlocks. That's how preposterous the fight was. You know what Povetkin should have done, and I know that there are fighters who watched this fight who were wondering what he was doing inside. Right? First, Brian Jennings on Twitter was on the money. When he gets inside, where are the uppercuts? I mean, you knew early on all Klitschko was going to do inside was hug him. Right? So once he gets inside and Klitschko is just trying to hug him, why isn't Povetkin throwing uppercuts? That's the first question. The second question is, when Klitschko tries to hug him, shouldn't Povetkin come in with an elbow up? Right? In other words, shouldn't he have something between him and Klitschko so Klitschko can't just pull him in and have him in a headlock? Shouldn't he have an elbow up so as Klitschko pulls him in, he actually has leverage and he still has a right hand free? Right? Povetkin, by contrast, doesn't have his left hand up to kind of like create some distance between a guy who's trying to hug him to death. Rather, Povetkin has his hand over here, hugging Klitschko. So when Klitschko pulls him in, Povetkin is just in a headlock. Let me go one step further. When you know a guy's going to pull you in, and who watching this fight didn't know early that that's what Klitschko was going to do inside? When a guy's pulling you in, shouldn't you let your hands go as you're being pulled in? Understand, if Klitschko is putting you in that repeated headlock, his hand's over here. Shouldn't you know that his hand's going to be over here with your head in it? Shouldn't you know that that means his side is exposed? Shouldn't you come in and think, okay, if he's going to try to hit me with a headlock here, I'm going to do a dodge and I'm going to throw my right hand to his rib cage. Then I'm going to keep moving my hands. Right? What happened to Povetkin? How come Povetkin's not even throwing volume as Klitschko's trying to clinch him on the inside? I thought that was ridiculous. Let me go one step further. Don't you have a problem when your opponent is able to time your entry point repeatedly? Right? Shouldn't Povetkin have made it a little bit harder for Klitschko to clinch him by faking like he's coming in? Not being obvious, not running in and then having Klitschko just wait for him, grab him in a headlock. Wait for him, push him down, lean on him. Right? Let me just say, too, the clinching wasn't even advanced clinching. Look where Klitschko's hands are. His hands are at his side. He leans on Povetkin. What's protecting his body at that point? As I said earlier, he puts Povetkin in a headlock. If you know that's how he's going to clinch you, shouldn't you figure out what to do then? Also, let me say this too. Povetkin at times, while he's being held, tries to throw punches. But the punches are all wide. Right? They're all wide. So Klitschko is able to, as he's clinching him, roll and throw up a hand. Right? Block these wide punches geared to hit him in the head. In preparing for this fight, Did it ever cross Alexander Povetkin's mind to actually shorten his punches inside? To not throw wide punches, particularly wide punches up top? Why wasn't he following Sam Langford's advice? Kill the body and the head will follow. You're facing a guy who's tall by heavyweight standards, who's taller than you by something like 5 inches. He has a lot of body, right? If you're coming in and you know you're going to get clinched, don't you at least let your hands go to the guy's body? Why all the wide shots? Let me say this too. This fight was there for the taking. You've just watched 12 rounds of this fight. How many good body shots over the 12 rounds did you see Wladimir Klitschko land? Right? Boxing fan, I'm talking to you. Right? Just how effective was his attack? We know he clinched a lot. Right? We know that there are many of us here who have watched fighting for an awfully long time who have not seen clinching like this over 12 rounds. Right? All I can say is he's clinching a lot. That's his inside game. He's not throwing anything major to Povetkin's body. I'm just here to tell you, and I know the scores were lopsided, but there are a lot of heavyweights out there who must just be salivating right now at the thought of fighting Wladimir Klitschko. Right? Forget the scorecards. He looked limited. In fact, forget my opinion. You tell me how many body shots did this guy land over 12 rounds? 12. Right? And let me say this too. Povetkin wasn't that effective in hiding his body, right? It didn't, he didn't look like Sergio Martinez in there. So if Povetkin's not doing a good job of hiding his body, in fact, if his body's so obvious that Wladimir Klitschko is able to repeatedly hold him in round after round, I mean, I'm guessing many people out there, I know me personally, are wondering how he only got docked 1 round for excessive holding. 1, right? He easily could have been docked 2, 3, 4 rounds for excessive holding. Easily, right? He could have been disqualified in the fight. Ike Chilemba, boxer, on Twitter, was talking about how disgraceful this referee was. Right? These are boxers, folks. Klitschko easily could have been disqualified in this fight. Right? And so my point is this. If Povetkin is so obvious that he's getting held repeatedly, where were the body shots from Wladimir Klitschko? Right? And so, I'll just say this. This fight blew up on me. I'm not happy about it. I'm bitter. I'm expressing that bitterness here. If anyone here thinks I have sour grapes, let me remove any doubt. I have sour grapes on this fight. Right? I thought the referee didn't allow a fair fight on the inside. Fighters can't show up holding an opponent as much as they did here. Let's go back in boxing history. That second Ali-Fraser fight's tainted because Ali, like Klitschko, kept holding Joe Frazier. The reason we have the thriller in Manila is I believe the referee was Carlos Padilla. Carlos Padilla early on told Ali, you can't hold him like that. Right? So without the ability to just clinch, Ali was actually forced to fight Joe Frazier. What then ensued was actually one of the great fights in heavyweight history. In fact, strike that. It's one of the great fights in boxing history. Right? You'd be very hard-pressed to find fights better than that. That's one of those rare fights that actually exceeded incredible height. What this fight needed was a real referee, someone like Carlos Padilla, who was going to say to Wladimir Klitschko, you can't hold him like that. Right? Who was going to let the fighters know, I'm not going to allow you to lean repeatedly on the back of this guy's neck. We didn't get that. Right? So what we had was Povetkin repeatedly getting inside, and then that portion of the fight getting truncated by a lot of leaning, a lot of holding. Right? I would say excessive leaning, excessive holding. Former heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis was also on Twitter. And during the fight, he joked that Wladimir Klitschko must have been listening to Lean on Me shortly before the fight. That's how ridiculous it was. Great fighters looking at this, shaking their head and saying, what's going on here? Right? So, all I can say is, this was a wrestling match. You know, I'm in no rush to see this fight again. Right? Let's just say this is one of those rare fights where one guy wins by a wide margin over a highly credible opponent. In fact, another reigning champion of the heavyweight division. And somehow, because of tactics, because of really cutting corners, breaking rules, bending rules, right? Because of all of that, his reputation actually gets diminished. Right? I was more impressed by Wladimir Klitschko before this fight, and keep in mind, I was rolling with the other guy. Right? Now I've watched this fight, and you know, all I can do is say, wow, it's too bad they didn't have a real ref. And it's too bad Wladimir Klitschko's not the kind of guy to actually develop an inside strategy other than just hugging the other guy to death. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. And let me just say this too. We criticize judges. CJ Ross comes to mind, right? We criticize judges who turn in preposterous scorecards. Let's go a little further and let's criticize referees who have very bad days. This ref had a very bad day. Right? A referee who can't handle fighters who are holding and grappling shouldn't be refereeing a heavyweight title fight. Right? That's what happened here. This referee, in my opinion, detracted from the event. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by. Wladimir Klitschko, to all the Wladimir Klitschko fans, and many of you let me know that you were rolling with Klitschko before this fight. To all the Wladimir Klitschko fans, I will say your guy won this fight by several rounds. Your guy remains the heavyweight champion. Let's just say that I'm still a skeptic. Thanks for stopping by.